What's going on, everybody? Hope you're all having a good Thursday. It's a fun little slate here we got. I got some pretty strong takes, and we will see how it works out for me. It did not work out well yesterday. It worked out very well the day before, so we'll get it. As Rody says, let's get it. What's up, Jim? Good to see you in here. Let's get it, guys. Everybody, please like and subscribe, all that jazz, and we'll get straight to the plays of the day, what I'm going to be doing, and then talk about what you're doing. Pop in questions. I'll answer them. I'll get to them at the end. So I'm going to say right now, I've got C's as my number one pitcher. I don't mind eating a little bit of chalk when I'm going to have stacks that are going to be completely, I think, very, very low owned as full stacks. And that's the way I'm treating this. So C's is going to be my highest owned pitcher. I'm eating the chalk on that one. I will be below the field, but we'll still have exposure to Spencer Strider. I will be below the field on Musgrove, but I'm going to have some of him. I will be above the field on Garrett Cole. I will be above the field on Tony Gonsolin, and I will be above the field on Logan Webb. That's pretty much my pitching pool, with the exception of Mr. Casey Lawrence for Toronto. I'm going to play the 4K pitcher. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take some gambles there and even play it in one of my big ones. Hasn't been working out ideally with some of my min guys lately. Casey Lawrence threw 87 pitches in his last start, only put up 8.7 fantasy points, gave up a ton of runs. The fact they let him keep going, it's reassuring. Maybe he gets the BABIP on his side. The K numbers are decent enough historically for him throughout the minors that I think we can take a shot with Casey Lawrence and get in some of the big bats we want to get in. The stacks that are going to be really, the most owned, you're going to see a lot of Atlanta out there. You're going to see I think you're going to see some of the Yankees. I think it'll be less than it was. I think you're going to see people using Arizona as value, which I think is reasonable. I wish the roof was open there, but it's not, so it can't have everything. But I think you're going to see Atlanta and Arizona oddly be the most chalky teams. I'm using Arizona for some fillers in some spots, Carson Kelly, Buddy Kennedy, things like that. But my stack I think there is going to be some ownership on it, but I really like. I mean, the ownership will still be low enough. I really like the Angels and I really like the Dodgers tonight. So I am going to be very overweight on both of those teams. All the LA stuff together. I think you're going to see some ownership on Will Smith. Trey Turner is my most popular shortstop. Muncy should get a little bit of love. I think Freeman ends up being the lower owned of the bunch. Justin Turner should be low owned. Cody Bellinger will be low owned. Filling those guys in for the stack. And then I'm stacking the Angels so many different ways. I'm not all that worried about the ownership. It's decent hitting weather, not ideal, not like the 95-degree game that you got it over there or the 90-degree game you got in Atlanta, but it's still nice. I also really like this Pittsburgh-Cincinnati situation. Maybe even just for fillers in some spots. Kyle Farmer is a cheap shortstop when you can't find one. India at the top of the lineup is a really, really strong play. I think that the stack for Pittsburgh is totally in play. Brian Reynolds, Brian Hayes, Sawinski, Vogelbach, or Yoshi. I like Cruz there, assuming that he's still in that 6-hole. You can fill it out with Michael Perez and his 3 home run possibilities as the catcher, even though I don't think he's gotten a hit since then. I think he might have had one hit since the 3 home run game. But I kind of like the Pirates in the best boost for stadiums of anybody. Pretty good hitting weather in Boston. I'm not as high on the Yankees I don't love it without the Judge in the lineup. It's I'm not like overwhelmingly excited to play these guys, but at the same time, neither is the field going to be as much as they were probably going to have some chalk early in the day. So I do think getting to them makes some sense, but I'm mostly Dodgers. I'll go through positions real quick. Currently I have C's at about 60%. I'll probably end up around 50% on C's. I have Gonsolin at 26%, probably going to end up around 20% on him, maybe a little higher. Garrett Cole, I've got 40%, probably will end up around 30% on him. Casey Lawrence, I've got 25%, probably going to end up around 20 to 15% on him. Strider, I've got 25%. And Logan Webb, I've got at 20%. That's basically my pitching pool. I am going to play about 10% of Musgrove, but it's not like my ideal thing. It's hard for me to justify with C's right there with the K upside against Detroit and just to overlook that. I think that is an argument for the Mets, but I think you're probably playing them on FanDuel because if you're going to spend this kind of money in a bad hitter's park, like they're crazy expensive to get the bats you want. So if you use a Casey Lawrence, you can get to them. Now they're also going to be very unowned on DraftKings because of it. So I'm okay with the Mets as we're getting pointed out here. I think that's a totally reasonable way to go. Yeah, see, I didn't see that announcement about Lawrence, but I'm still probably going to be willing to take that chance if I believe he is going to get that, those innings. So that is an interesting thing to worry about because we've seen it happen with these starters. And the long guys don't always come in. They usually do, but they don't always, and that's too much of a risk to probably risk one of the giant buy-ins. So maybe I have to get that one somewhere else. What's up, Peyton Wavy? What's up, Sentinel? Getting all this stuff. I think C's is totally fine, but I don't think you have to go with him on FanDuel. I mean, look, all these guys have upside, right? So I think you could just make an argument to play anyone who's lower owned, depending on what stacks you're going with, especially. If you're going to play a little bit of a chalkier stack, yeah, probably avoiding C's might be the way to go. And we know C's can get wild, and have just a really bad outing. It does feel like this crazy ownership might be a bit much. I would probably... you got Strider who's also going to get some ownership, but I would probably move over to Cole or even Logan Webb or Musgrove over there if I was going to try and get off of the C's chalk. But I do like C's for what it's worth, so I don't mind if you want to use them if your stack is not going to be too high owned. Single entry, I think it's totally fine. So that makes it a lot easier to do. The White Sox are. I'm going to poke back at the White Sox are a good hitting team. I don't agree with that entirely. And this is a good spot for them. I'll say that. Not ideal with the wind blowing in, going to have some ownership. I'm probably avoiding it, but I totally understand if you want to make that play yourself. I just can't quite get there. And you have a pretty weak bullpen in Detroit. And we've seen, ups and downs out of Brisky. We actually saw him pitch pretty well in a few games. And he definitely can allow some power. So I don't mind the White Sox, but I personally am not getting to them, so I'm not going to advocate for them. Other stacks that I like that I'm not getting to are going to be Colorado, Cincinnati, who I've got a little pieces of, but not the full stack. The Mets I mentioned already. And then Toronto, because of the hitting conditions. So you have a low strikeout lefty against a team that's just chock full of righties with power versus lefties. The problem is Gonzalez usually limits enough damage. It's been pretty bad lately, but hasn't, it's not like he's like out there getting shelled, and he sort of does enough just to where the full 5-man doesn't work. So I've got some 3 and 4-mans of Toronto, mostly picking out my favorite bats. Those would be Guerrero, Springer, probably Kirk, Bichette, and Teoscar, but not using. Oh, and of course Matt Chapman, but I'm not using all of them together. I just think that they're worth guys to fill in on small sides. I totally understand the argument for the Orioles as well, and I like that you're pointing that out over there because I could definitely see the Orioles having a day at low ownership, and they're all in that middle price range, which should keep every one of them sort of like lowish owned. So I kind of like that idea to maybe get to some Orioles. Personally, I'm not getting to them as current here. And we have Jake Layman and no Trace Thompson. So I'm going to have to go back and edit all my lineups. I'll be here for another 10 minutes. Let's talk through the rest of this slate. I'm going to have to make some changes. Things are happening as they always do at this hour, especially when you want to stack the later games. I'm going to take a quick look at the Dodger lineup that was released because no Muncie's in there. I'm sorry, no Lamb. It does change some of my love there because he was a cheap piece that made it work. Trace is not nearly as cheap. And that is going to make it a little bit harder for me to do my Dodgers and Angels together while paying up for pitching. So definitely going to probably have to come off of that. You might also see a little more ownership on Freddie Freeman now. Just worth pointing out. All right, let's see. What else you got here? Pop in the questions, the thoughts. I'll give out some percentages of some hitters. Catchers, it's a lot with stacks, but Will Smith, Kurt Suzuki, Travis d'Arnaud, and Jose Trevino. Along with Perez in my Pittsburgh stacks. Jake Lamb was going to be one of my first base guys because I like the outfield position a lot today. Love Jared Walsh, love Matt Olson, love Vlad. Those are my other guys that I'm using. Second base, I'm using the cheapies mostly. Rengifo in my Angels stacks or Stefanik in my Angels stacks. Buddy Kennedy in my mini Arizona stacks, but even as a one-off is fine at 2K. And then I'll throw in some Arcia to, just to differentiate a little bit with my Angels, my Brave stacks. Jonathan VR, you can use him at second base also, but he's at third base for me mostly. I do like Muncy, Turner a lot. I like the Dodgers. I like Chapman, as I mentioned, and Austin Riley. In the outfield, shortstop, I have a disgusting amount of Trey Turner. Doesn't feel like you should do that in general. I feel very good about him in this matchup tonight, both power and speed upside. But he's in like 60% of my lineups, which is probably too much for a hitter on this slate. It's a pretty good size slate, so I don't need to do that as much of that. My highest owned outfielders are going to be Trout, Betts, and Marsh. I'm sorry, Trout, Betts, Marsh, and Ward. Marsh to fill out the Angel stacks. Ward, again, filling out Angel stacks, or even as a one-off or a small one. I really like Taylor Ward tonight. Love Bellinger, Betts. So mostly filtering in my stacks. Obviously, Acuna, Duvall, Ozuna. Christian Hummel's another cheap option for Arizona that you can use. I do like the Pirates guys, Brian Reynolds and Sawinski. George Springer is a part of a mini stack for me. Those are mainly the guys I'm using. I'm using a little O'Neill Cruz, by the way, at shortstop. I didn't mention that before, and we'll see how that lineup shakes out because we haven't gotten it yet. But that's sort of what I'm doing. So pop on in with the questions, pop on in with the thoughts, because that is basically my rundown of what I'm doing in terms of who I'm heaviest on today. And it does feel like with all these pitchers that the ownership being so concentrated on Cease, I probably should come off of him a little bit more than I am. I think he has the highest upside, the best matchup. And I kind of like the guys around him, playing him with a Cole or with a Musgrove or with a Gonsolin. And I'm okay with, the Strider thing Strider's, this kid's got so much skill, like it's ridiculous, and he could go win a slate by himself. St. Louis is still a good enough offense. And if you want to take a weird stance on this slate, I would actually encourage people, if you're playing 150, I probably would have, like if I scripted, entered 10% St. Louis, just to get a great exposure to that hitting weather. And again, you have a little bit of concerns about the weather there, but you're going to have no ownership on anybody from St. Louis. And it's a good enough offense where if Strider, with these young guys, we see it sometimes. Sometimes you get a little bit wild in the zone. And Strider's actually had pretty good control mostly, but he had a 5-walk game. If he gets a little wild, I think you could see some potential big dividends being paid by the St. Louis stack. I just am not playing enough lineups to get to them personally. So that's where I'm at. My favorite one-off versus Cole, that's a good question. I like that question because, and the answer is not necessarily my favorite one-off. The right answer would be Devers, but Devers is 5,500. I like the third. I like some of the other guys. I like a third base, my Dodger guys. I think JD is reasonable, but I think my favorite would probably be Xander, just because he fits in a price point at shortstop that others don't. So I would say Xander would probably be my favorite. But to be honest, you shouldn't go out of your way to try to take a home run thing against Cole. Now, he does give up home runs. So that's fair. But there's a big slate. We got a lot of guys to choose from. We don't need to try and pick on one of the best pitchers in baseball, even though he's been very home run prone this season. And if you get the wrong guy, you're just getting probably a 0. Maybe you get a 3 out of them or something. And they're expensive. It's not like you're getting a discount for any of the Boston guys. So I am not going to be heavily invested in the Boston bats, but I do think I will have a little bit of Bogarts just because he fits into that price point at shortstop that others don't on DraftKings. All right, keep popping them in, guys. I've got another 5 minutes to go before I have to go edit my lineups, and we'll keep talking through it. But I think I'm going to have to lessen a little bit of my Dylan Cease love, just because there's no reason to have 900 million% of somebody. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's see what else we got here. I'm going to take this because I've got Cease with the Angels. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to have to figure that one out because the Jake Lamb thing is a little frustrating because he makes things work for the Dodgers, and lately there hasn't been as much pinch hit risk with him because we have so many guys unhealthy. I'm just going to double check the Dodgers weather tonight. It's 73. It's pretty good for LA. Wind blowing out to center at 9 miles an hour. Really like the Dodgers tonight and really like the Angels. I know the Dodgers have let us down. A bunch of people I see in our Discord, people are like, the Dodgers is obviously they suck. No, they're the second best offense in baseball. They have to play on the West Coast, and sometimes it's not as good hitting weather. And good teams are going to let you down all the time. That's just the nature of the game. I would say the Dodgers are going to, by the end of the season, they'll score either the most runs or probably second most runs. No, I didn't say I have no love for Colorado. I am not playing Colorado, but I think that they're totally viable. I just don't love, people act like Arizona's hitting conditions are good. They're not. When the roof is closed, this is not a stadium you want to be overwhelmingly in love with. And I also think that, I think that they're totally viable. I personally am not finding myself getting to as much of them. I like the idea in general of picking on Keuchel. I don't know. I have 5K for Cron. We finally got a home run out of Chris Bryant the other day. And and I think they're going to have ownership. Daza is going to be popular at 2,900. Connor Joe, they're priced reasonably, and unless you get down to the sixth or later in the lineup, you're not going to really get any low ownership on people, in my opinion. So I just don't think that it's going to happen for me, but I totally support anyone else who wants to stack them. They're one of the teams, along with the White Sox, that I am not stacking, but I fully support stacking. I'm just not doing it myself. Gonsolin, geez, man. I mean, if we don't pretend that this guy is absolutely the Cy Young favorite almost at this point, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, like what he's doing. And yeah, sure, Joe Musgrove has been really good too. Gonsolin has been unbelievable. It's every time he pitches, they win. He doesn't ever throw 100 pitches, but he's able. I mean, he pitched 7 2/3 and only threw 92 pitches the last time out. Also had 8 strikeouts in that game. He's been basically the most consistent and one of the best pitchers in baseball. And I think he's running away with the Cy Young right now. So I really do. I don't see any argument against him. And if people want to say, oh, he doesn't pitch as much, he doesn't throw as many pitches. Hey, he does his job better than anybody else does. He's 10-0. He's given up 1.5 runs per game. I mean, 1.5 runs per 9. Give me a break. He's been just freaking awesome. So very happy to see Gonsolin become the pitcher that we knew he could be in LA. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Doesn't look like there's any other questions. I like what Shark said about the LA-Baltimore side, even though I didn't get to Baltimore as much myself. Again, you can't play everybody, and I'd rather have different combinations of my favorite stacks than all of the combinations of the other stacks. So I'm gonna try to get more exposure to the LA things, and I am mixing in some of the Braves, who are going to be, I think, pretty chalky, assuming the weather looks like it's okay-ish. They're going to be chalky-ish. But I do like them, but you can mix them in with some of these other cheapies and some of these other low-owned stacks that make enough sense. And all you have to do is, if you don't play Strider, if you don't play C's, you're already going to be differentiating yourself from an ownership standpoint. And you can just drop down and play Gonsolin and Webb, and there's no reason those two couldn't be the highest scoring players. I've watched Logan Webb when he gets hot. When he gets hot, he is the guy as a Dodger fan, he scares me more than any pitcher in baseball. I haven't seen the Dodgers have as much trouble hitting a pitcher than they did Logan Webb last year. And of course, he hasn't pitched against them this year, so I haven't seen as much. The strikeouts were down for him, but they're starting to pick back up. We've seen some good games out of him lately, including in some tough matchups. And I think this is a reasonable spot to take a shot on Logan Webb as a pivot off of Strider at lower ownership. Drizzling in Atlanta. There's pop-up storms, as we know. That always happens. Weird weather system drives you crazy. But that Atlanta power and that hitting weather is just crazy. 90 degrees with the wind blowing out in that stadium. Oof, got to look at that one. I think the Dodgers, and the thing is, the Dodgers are going to be lower owned on. It's too bad they even release their lineup now. On the slates where they don't release it and they're supposed to be chalky, the later games just don't get owned as much as you'd think they would. And we're going to see a little bit of that, I think, tonight, with potentially some. We haven't got the Toronto lineup yet, so that might be the team tonight. The Giants are always late to release their lineup. Doesn't matter tonight because we're not going to stack them against Musgrove, but they're just pesky enough to where I don't really want to play Musgrove either. So I'm just talking through everything. That's basically what I got for you. Please hit the like before you get out of here. Please join us at TrueDFS.com. I post my early builds. It's pretty similar to what I'm still doing, and let's make some money tonight. Let's get it. Good luck to everybody.